Hey, this is Stephen Platinum, your friend in wrestling, with Platinum versus Raw from July 13th, 2020. This show was dominated by the women. Not in terms of how many segments they were in, but in terms of what was the true interesting and the truly professional. The main event featuring Sasha Banks and Bayley against the Kabuki Warriors was head and shoulders, ring work wise, ahead of everything else. And I'm not just talking about sort of the X's and O's and bell to bell of move and structure of the match, though, especially structure of the match wise, it certainly was better than anything else we saw, but it was the main event and they gave them more time. In terms of creativity, in terms of enthusiasm, that's the thing I want to talk about here at the top of the show, the enthusiasm with which the women do their work. Now that how women's wrestling and women wrestlers in general are being portrayed in a much more complex and nuanced light. It's no longer just shrieking evil women against the girl next door. It's so much better to watch. And this Raw was rather pedantic, boring, unfulfilling, and painful for the most part, except for two segments in particular. This is not to say that other people didn't do good work. MVP continues to shine on the microphone, for example, and R-Truth certainly looks like he's having fun out there, though his things are increasingly of little consequence. But certainly when the women are doing their thing, it is of consequence. Especially Sasha Bayley and the Kabuki Warriors were great. The way they brought out Shayna Baszler, though a little clunky with her promo, I'm not mad about the fact that she came out and demolished all the ninjas to put herself over. Particularly the strikes look particularly great. It's interesting, though, all the people who complain about, like, Tessa Blanchard winning the title against a man, or anytime a woman does something against a man. I don't imagine anybody will complain about Shayna Baszler demolishing a bunch of almost literally faceless ninjas, dudes in masks. I don't think anybody will have a complaint about that, and it's because of the way Sasha Baszler is portrayed and the guys they had her beat up. I think those ninjas serve a very good purpose. Similar in PCW, I had two different things. I had the Campus Strike Force, which were the goofy Power Ranger ripoffs that would get beat up, and then I would have the Warhorse gimmick, which were the same series of guys in masks who each had a number assigned to them, similar to the Dark Order, but I knew enough to know that that was a jobber gimmick. And men and women alike beat them up, and nobody had anything to say about it because of the way that they were booked and handled. In any case, what do we do about the rest of fucking Raw, folks? Because it is a slog to get through. I took a long phone call with a friend of mine to help me get through it, and I worked on another project during Raw. The thought of sitting there and watching Raw unfettered without something else to do is almost unbearable. And some will say, well, Steve, then stop watching. Well, I love wrestling and I love being a part of it and I love commenting on it, and not commenting on the flagship show of the biggest wrestling company in the world seems remiss, but it is not a pleasurable task. Now, I'm the kind of guy, very modern in that way, that does two things at once almost all the time. But Raw rarely inspires me to watch, except for that main event where I did put everything down and watched. And when Shayna Baszler came out, I was interested and I put everything down and watched. But beyond that, it was a bit of a slog. Let's get into it quickly. Then, Now, and Forever is the open. I wonder if they will come up with something else. Then, Now, and Forever is pretty great, though. Raw theme happens, is what it is. This is the go-home show for a horror night at Extreme Rules or whatever they've changed it to this week. We get an announcement of our main event, though they don't talk about it again throughout the show, which is a mistake. I'm glad that they're announcing matches at the top. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad that they didn't go with the theme that they were going throughout the week of grudge match settling or whatever the fuck, because a lot of these aren't grudge matches. But Kabuki Warriors against Sasha and Bailey, R-Truth against Randy Orton, what? And Kevin Owens against Seth Rollins. We open with the VIP Lounge. MVP, he's talking about at the pay-per-view this Sunday, it's going to be Cruz against MVP for the title, explaining why they let MVP get that win over him. Which means that they're dragging out the thing with Lashley. I shouldn't say dragging out because that sounds negative. They're taking their time with it, which I think is good. Dolph Ziggler comes out, has not picked the stipulation yet. So we're hiding the stipulation as part of a draw, I guess. Strategy-wise, it makes sense. Nobody can explain to me why it makes sense that Drew McIntyre is letting him pick the stipulation. That doesn't make sense in the least. And Drew even tries to give this weak explanation of, I was trying to be nice, which sounds really fucking stupid. Drew McIntyre says he wants action. He punches Dolph. Okay. Hopefully Dolph gets some back, or that seems awfully weird. Interview, Angel Garza, Andrade, and Zelina. You can hear the collective sighs from the audience when this happens. They've given them an appropriate push, don't get me wrong, but everything seems to center around, these guys don't really get along. There's going to be an elimination match for some reason against the Viking Raiders. And then there's another joke about one of the Viking Raiders is hot and the other isn't, and the interviewer is forced to go along with this. Man, kudos to them going along with it, is what it is. Braun and Bray, we get to a commercial, and we really push the idea of Braun Strowman against Bray Wyatt in the Swamp match. Okay. Not NXT again. They're not pushing NXT again when most people are watching. Weird. Viking Raiders against Angel and Andrade in the elimination. One of the Viking Raiders, the not hot one, is eliminated. And we go to commercial. We come back, Angel is eliminated, but remains out there and helps Andrade score the win. I love that powerbomb finish that they did, because it was not conventional and not just their finisher, and the story made sense. We are working together. Great. Interview. Ruby Riott, confronted by the Iconics, then Bianca Belair comes out and says, I'll be your tag partner. Oh, boy. But it's something, and they're continuing to do this thing with Ruby Riott and the Iconics. It only makes sense if Bianca helps her win, and we go somewhere from there. We'll see if they do that. That's what I have in my notes. We go to commercial for Cannonball, which is going to show right after Raw, which makes sense since it's a Miz thing. We have an NXT commercial here. And now we're setting up Keith Lee against Karrion Kross, which is the only place to logically go, which is great. And I'm happy. NXT is doing something that's interesting me, and they're obviously reaping the benefits and the ratings. It does feel like hot-shotting, though. Where do they go after this thing? We will have to see. They also show a bit of the women, but the women on NXT, while energetic and dynamic, don't seem to be taking over the show quite in the same way the women on Raw do, which is fascinating. The Iconics against Ruby Riott, Bianca Belair, and to nobody's surprise, as I had it in my notes, predicted Bianca Belair gets the pin and gets the win. So Ruby Riott finally gets to get one back. And the Iconics, who went from maybe we're going to take over this show, are now relegated to the role of doing 50-50 stuff with Ruby Riott. But we'll see where it goes from there. We got R-Truth with Ricochet and Cedric. They have what passes for comedy. Little bits happen here. Okay. Camera pans over. Tozawa is there. Asking, R-Truth asks him to teach him some black belt karate because he has a match later on. Tozawa says, no way. R-Truth says, all right, I'm going to defend my title against you. Let's get to the ring. Okay. We go to commercial. We come back. It's going to be Tozawa against R-Truth, but Shayna Baszler comes out. Nice surprise. Chokes out the first person. That knee strike looked particularly great, and then that gut wrench into the face first thing looked really good as well. Tozawa hits the line, though it doesn't really go over comedy-wise. They got to really get. It's not so much a matter of timing because they're again putting these clips together. It's just there's just a way to do comedy that WWE has missed for only the last 50 years. Tozawa hits the line, "I'm out," which is funny, but again, it's just not effectively done. That's not really his fault. They really need to hit these things harder. They need someone producing these segments that really can get the most out of these lines. Shayna cuts a promo. It's not terrible, but it's also not great. She doesn't have a great catchphrase or a way to button it, or else I would have written it down and remembered it. Yeah. Then we go over all the eye for an eye stuff and how fucking ludicrous that is. Seth and Murphy have a little bit. Not much comes of that. It's just this sort of idea of this eye for an eye thing is so ridiculous that they're not leaning into it hard enough. They just got to lean into this notion or not lean into it. They're afraid to do it because they know it's stupid. But if you're going to do an eye for an eye where somebody's pulling somebody's eye out somehow, some way, keep coming up with funky ass shit like every single day, then, I mean, just lean into it and do it. Go to commercial. We're at the hour mark. And if you look at that first hour, nothing mattered except for the Shayna Baszler thing. That's the truth. Get a video game commercial for Battlegrounds when we come back, WWE thing. Again, it looks to be like a super fun, really out there game. And it's just a hearty reminder that most of the stars that they're emphasizing no longer work for the company or work in an in-ring capacity. Stuff. More eye for an eye stuff. Seth Rollins cuts the worst promo of 2020 so far. It is fucking awful. He gets lost right away. He says eye for an eye 100 times and looks completely lost throughout the thing. It's really awful. This is what prompted me to call my friend to just go, did you see that shit? And then first thing out of his mouth was, you want to talk about that Seth Rollins promo, how bad it was. So yes, I wasn't the only one who noticed. Kevin Owens comes and says, I got you an eye patch. Oh boy. Murphy comes out to confront Kevin Owens. Aleister Black goes and they brawl. We go to commercial. Raw is doing an increasingly good job in a subtle way of hooking and dragging us through the commercial without doing it in blatant fashion. Murphy and Aleister, Ray Owens, Rollins, a bunch of brawl, a bunch of shit happens. No consequence. Commercial. Come out. Now we've got Seth versus Kevin Owens. Go to commercial. We show Rey Mysterio on the outside of the ring a lot. Kevin Owens wins. Okay. Show and Flair. And keep in mind, this is the bulk of the show. This is what really the main emphasis of the show, because people don't watch as much in the third hour. So even though the women are getting the main event, in reality, the main event happens in Act 2 on Raw. And so all this Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins stuff, which is eating up all of this time, is supposed to be the important part. We get Show and Flair in a promo. I don't understand why Show is not angrier at Flair. None of that makes sense. Commercial, we come back. Randy Orton, show a bunch of legend killing stuff. Really puts him over, but it emphasizes the fact that we're not really going to get any Randy Orton shit worth a shit. We go to commercial. That was your second hour, folks. Whew. Come back. Our fifth match, R-Truth against Randy Orton. Randy Orton beats him fast. Big Show's there. They look at each other. Randy Orton gets away. This old school thing of not letting them touch each other is fine. But there is this thing of this is of no consequence. It's just an overall feeling of malaise that I get looking at this stuff. Interview with MVP and Lashley. Lashley apparently is going to do a match with Ricochet where I predict full Nelsons for Ricochet and full Nelsons for Cedric. Dolph Ziggler, we segue to Dolph Ziggler. I can't read my notes here. It shows how half interested I was in this. No, we go to Drew, and then Ziggler comes out. We have a little bit of a brawly brawl pull apart, which feels very forced and very, we're in the, this is a go-home show, and we have to give Ziggler something back. Again, all of these things seem like they're done because it's the next logical step, not because anybody's really feeling it. That's my overall critique. Commercial, come back. Ricochet against Lashley, full Nelsons for everybody, I wrote here, so that's what happened. Yeah. They got into it in a clever way. Ricochet's really fucking good and really interesting in the ring, and people will try to argue against, but Ricochet's not being wasted, but he's clearly being wasted. It's too bad. But he's getting paid. I guess in that sense, it's all good. It just seems like they're missing an opportunity. Pushing Lashley is not a bad thing, don't get me wrong. Putting him with MVP was absolutely the right move. Could you imagine if he was still with Lana doing that nonsense? All right, commercial, come back. The horror show at Extreme Rules show accepts the match. Wow. And then we've got, finally, thank the Lord, Sasha and Bayley against Asuka and Kairi Sane. A friend of mine said, oh, you know, on SmackDown, Steve, I know you don't watch it, but you want to watch it. You want to watch this last one because they have the Sasha and Bayley did this awesome the video montage of how great they were. And it's fucking awesome. And I was like, they'll just show it on Raw. And you know what? I was absolutely right. They just showed it on Raw. And it is great. It's wonderful. This match is fucking awesome. It started hot, went into the commercial break hot. They come back, double slingshot into the glass on Kairi by Sasha and Bayley was fucking awesome. They ended up showing it after the second commercial break. We go to a commercial break. I don't go through things move by move unless they really catch me. And I gotta say, I mean, holy fuck, that whole finish was mind-blowing. It ended up putting Sasha over at the end. The thing where she was going to take the thing where she got fucking elbowed by Kairi Sane from the top rope looked amazing. The interplay between Bayley sneaking over them, breaking up that pin, and then her and Asuka going at it. It's leaving Sasha alone with a fired up Kairi Sane. Kairi going for that when she's sitting up, Sasha's sitting up and she's going for the clothesline, but then gets caught in the bank statement, and everything was done right here. Everybody looked great. Kairi Sane looked great because she was basically carrying the end of the match offensively, and she looked fantastic. Just everything fucking looked good. And the women are at the top of their game, and they need to book the men with the same amount of enthusiasm. In one of my suggestions of what the WWE could do differently to improve themselves, I said, have a competition between the women and the men. But maybe I'm wrong about that, because right now the men are not on par with what's going on with the women, period. And this is bad. Platinum versus Raw.